Ever wonder why some people are so obsessed with shonen manga? For Park Ji-woong, it's probably a bit of an inferiority complex. Usually those stories start with some kid living a miserable life, but here, things get cut short before the plot even begins. You know the drill. The protagonist dies and everyone expects some epic fantasy adventure to start. They usually get a second chance, maybe some cheat skills or a hidden class that makes them instantly overpowered. They're supposed to go on a journey, find some loyal companions, and eventually take down a demon king. It's the ultimate dream, right? Getting reincarnated into another world and actually enjoying life for once. Well, throw all those tropes out the window because none of that is happening here. This isn't your typical fantasy story. It's much more depressing and way too real. Take a look at these shoes left on the roof at sunset. It's a pretty clear sign of how Ji-woong's story ended. That dead body rotting in a dumpster. Yeah, that's him. Talk about a rough start. This is the actual life and death of 17-year-old Park Ji-woong. He's realizing pretty quickly that there are no magic portals or goddess waitrooms. His dad always warned him about this. He's standing there as a ghost, staring at his own corpse and wondering if this is really the end. Seriously, he just killed himself, and now he's stuck as a spirit with nowhere to go. Turns out, if you don't pass on to the afterlife, you just become a vengeful spirit. And let me tell you, being a ghost isn't exactly fun. It's cold, empty, and honestly just miserable. It's a constant cycle of loneliness and suffocation that never seems to end. Ji-woong can feel his sanity slipping, like he's on the verge of turning into something monstrous. He starts worrying about how his dad, who's a shaman, would absolutely lose it if he saw his son like this. That something else probably means becoming an evil spirit. That would be a complete disaster. So now he's just sitting there, watching his own body and asking what the hell he's supposed to do next. He chose to die to escape his problems, but staring at his own dead face is definitely worse. Regret is hitting him hard. This wasn't how he wanted things to go down at all. Suddenly, the corpse in the dumpster sits up and gasps, complaining that he almost died for real. The body starts checking itself over, complaining about a sprained ankle like it didn't just fall off a building. Then it stands up and declares it's time to live life to the fullest, leaving Ji-woong's ghost completely speechless. As the sun goes down over the city, the situation just keeps getting weirder. Ji-woong finally snaps out of it and screams at the person walking away in his body to hold on. The body just keeps strolling along, humming a tune while the ghost tries to block its path. He's screaming his head off, wondering how this guy can't hear him when he's right in his face. The guy suddenly stops and takes off Ji-woong's glasses, proving he can definitely hear the shouting. Ji-woong is furious, calling him a body-snatching bastard, but the guy just calmly says he was being nice. Before Ji-woong can react, the man reaches out and grabs the ghost right by the hair. Ji-woong is freaking out. How can a physical hand grab a spirit like it's nothing? The Ancestor tells him to watch his tone, his expression shifting into something much more intimidating. He demands to know who gave Ji-woong permission to die, asking if he actually wants to be gone for real. Ji-woong immediately buckles and stammers out an apology, calling the guy sir out of pure instinct. He's still confused, though, and tries to ask what his death has to do with some stranger taking over his body. The guy doesn't want to hear it and starts delivering a flurry of slaps, insisting it has everything to do with him. Ji-woong is yelping in pain, terrified that the beating is going to turn him into an evil spirit. But the Ancestor just smirks and tells the kid he's actually the one keeping him stable right now. And just like that, Ji-woong realizes the pain and the coldness are completely gone. Ancestor lets out a sigh, asking why Ji-woong thinks he can manhandle a spirit like this. The ghost just stammers, wondering if this guy is some kind of shaman. Ancestor laughs, saying the kid is pretty sharp for someone from a shaman family. Then he poses the big question, who exactly is he? He explains that back in his day, he was a big-shot shaman who earned enough karma for a bloodline reincarnation. Ji-woong just stares, having absolutely no clue what his own Ancestor is talking about. Ancestor decides a physical lesson is better than words, slapping the ghost while shouting about the promised reincarnation. He spells it out. He was supposed to be born as Ti-Woong's descendant, but that's impossible if the sole heir to the bloodline just drops dead. Ti-Woong is back on the ground, groaning as the ancestor rants about how much work he put in to earn that second life. Suddenly, the man stops, sensing that something about this whole situation is seriously off. He explains that according to the laws of causality, Ti-Woong wasn't supposed to die until the ancestor was born into the family. He gets right in the ghost's face, furious that Ti-Woong broke the cycle of fate by committing suicide. To him, this death is absolute nonsense that defies the very laws of the universe. He points a finger at the trembling ghost, threatening to erase his soul right then and there if he doesn't give a good reason. Ti-Woong is a shaking mess, trying to catch his breath and begging for just a second to pull himself together. Finally, he chokes out one word, fear. Ancestor wonders what could possibly be scary enough to shatter fate itself. Ti-Woong panics, insisting he just needs a deep breath, but the ancestor isn't in a patient mood. As he grabs the kid again, he notices a weird purple glow emanating from Ti-Woong's arm. His eyes go wide as the realization hits him. This isn't just a regular ghost he's dealing with. He tells the kid straight up, he's possessed and whatever is inside him is incredibly nasty. He's genuinely surprised that a child could be carrying around such a deep-seated level of wrath. He takes a closer look at the marks, noting that even in his original life, he rarely saw grudges this vicious. Ti-Woong starts talking about his dad, who he always thought was just a regular office worker. He explains that his father only did shaman stuff as a side hustle because the business wasn't doing great. But then his dad went on a business trip one day and just never came back. In the end, Ti-Woong was left alone in a house filled with his father's old supernatural gear. Among those items was a sealed jar, something his dad warned was an extremely dangerous family heirloom. Over time, the protective talisman on the jar started to tear and fall apart. One night while he was at his computer, Ti-Woong heard the sound of something breaking in the other room. He got up to investigate, thinking maybe something had just fallen off a shelf. He stepped into the dark hallway, wondering what that noise was. That's when he saw it. The jar was shattered, and the talisman was lying useless on the floor. Even as a shaman's son, the idea of seeing a ghost was always a little scary to him. But he figured he was used to this kind of thing, so he didn't immediately panic. He figured he'd just deal with the mess in the morning and headed back to his room. He even started thinking about a late-night snack run to the convenience store. But then he saw it. This was the first time he'd ever laid eyes on something so grotesque. A mass of purple demonic hands was crawling out of the darkness, reaching for him. Ti-Woong froze, realizing this was way beyond anything his dad had ever mentioned. Back in the present, the ancestor asks if Ti-Woong's dad didn't have any powerful friends to help out. Ti-Woong remembers a temple his father mentioned, home to his best friend and a powerful exorcist. We see a flashback of a powerful figure effortlessly grabbing a demonic spirit. This is Baemchial, a massive monk who tells the spirit to just endure the pain because it'll be over soon. He starts crushing the spirit's head as Ti-Woong's younger self screams out for the monk. Monk Baemchial looks up from his task, wondering who could be knocking at the temple door at such an ungodly hour. He recognizes Ti-Woong immediately, asking if the boy is out of money again since he just sent him his living expenses. Ti-Woong is a frantic mess, stammering that it's not about the money, but about the jar in his house and the thing that came out of it. Baemchial cuts him off mid-sentence, his expression turning grave as he senses the dark energy clinging to the boy. He doesn't need Ti-Woong to say another word. The sheer intensity of the malice following him says it all. The monk's eyes narrow as he realizes the magnitude of the trouble Ti-Woong has brought to his doorstep. He tells Ti-Woong plainly that he's brought a monster with him, one that is far beyond a normal spirit. A massive purple demonic entity with countless hands looms over them, letting out a silent, terrifying screech. Baemchial doesn't flinch, merely calling the demon impatient as he begins to count its many arms. He continues his count with clinical detachment, even as the monster lashes out with multiple limbs. The monk keeps counting, reaching 7, 8, then 9, tracking every single point of attack. A massive purple hand slams down, the impact shaking the very air around them. He finally hits 10, his voice steady even as the demonic pressure intensifies. Baemchial is caught in the demon's grasp, but he's already made his assessment of the threat level. Based on the arm count, he identifies the creature as a 100-year demon, a classification that leaves Tiwung reeling in shock. He explains that this is the kind of monster someone would be exceptionally unlucky to encounter even once in their life. He curses under his breath, realizing he's already drained too much of his strength dealing with other matters. Still, he stands his ground, declaring that it's the destiny of strong beings to be drawn to one another. The monk challenges the 100-year demon to give him everything it's got, his spirit refusing to break. The demon responds with a display of pure, unadulterated malice, its form shifting and churning in the dark. Baemchial's expression suddenly shifts, sensing something has changed in the middle of the confrontation. Tiwung thinks the monk is winning, but Baemchial leans in and tells the boy to listen very carefully. He tells Tiwung that when he gives the signal, he must run and never look back, because there's nowhere left to hide. The monk's eyes are full of a grim resolve as he tells Tiwung that if he doesn't return by morning. He finishes with a chilling command, "Take your own life." Tiwung can't believe what he's hearing. Tiwung is horrified, wondering what kind of person tells their friend's son to go kill himself. Baemchial screams for him to run as he's swallowed by a tide of demonic hands, sacrificing himself for the boy. Tiwung ran all the way home, his mind a blur of confusion and terror as he left the monk behind. He spent the rest of the night huddled in a corner, consumed by fear, resentment toward his father, and overwhelming guilt. By morning it was clear. The monk was never coming back, and Tiwung was truly alone. Back in the present, the Ancestor interrupts Tiwung's story, telling him that thing wasn't just a 100-year demon. Tiwung is confused, pointing out that the monk himself said it had 100 hands. The Ancestor explains that there are beings some call disasters or calamities, at the absolute pinnacle of evil. He describes them as great calamities that overturn the entire world whenever they descend. He reveals their true name, 1,000-year demons. Tiwung can only stare in mute horror. The Ancestor realizes it would take a being of that magnitude to warp the laws of causality so completely. Tiwung panics, asking if they're both in huge trouble now, but the Ancestor just complains about his head hurting. The Ancestor notes that if the demon hasn't found them yet, it either lost the trail or the monk actually managed to kill it. But deep down, he knows a living, breathing calamity doesn't just let its prey go. Suddenly, a dark, heavy pressure begins to fill the air, and Tiwung screams out in terror. A horrifying face with a wide, toothy grin emerges from the darkness, its presence unmistakable. The 1,000-year demon has found them, its massive purple hands reaching out to claim its prize. Tiwung's body buckles under the sheer weight of the demonic pressure, his spiritual power being sucked away like water in a desert. The Ancestor, speaking through Tiwung's mouth, asks why an immortal-level entity is so desperate to possess such a pathetic vessel. The 1,000-year demon scoffs at the word, fight, calling such a concept barbaric when applied to the gap between them. It declares that its power is absolute and unilateral, viewing Tiwung as nothing more than a lowly microbe. Tiwung clutches his head in agony as the demon's voice resonates directly within his skull, tearing at his sanity. The demon continues its arrogant monologue, telling the boy that even wishing for a conversation with it is a grave insult. It suggests that to warrant even a single word, he should have brought forth Dangun himself from the beginning of time. The monster looms over the terrified boy, mentioning Chachong, the first shaman king, as the minimum level of opponent it expects. As the demon prepares to unleash its unilateral violence, the Ancestor's voice rings out, asking who this bastard thinks he's talking to. The demon is taken aback, its pink eyes flickering with confusion at the boy's sudden shift in tone. Ancestor cracks his neck, sounding more annoyed than anything, stating that his reincarnation is already a mess without this pest. He stands tall, eyes glowing with a sharp, predatory light, and asks the demon what it was saying about Chachong. He stares directly into the demon's soul with a chilling intensity, asking one simple, terrifying question. Do you know me? Namhi Chachong, the second king of Silla, lived 2,000 years ago in an age where darkness truly ruled. It was a time when monsters and evil spirits were as common as wild beasts, and a wrong turn in the forest meant certain death. A lone traveler, face hidden behind a paper mask, climbs through the dark mountains, panting with exhaustion. He stops dead in his tracks, his eyes widening behind the mask as he encounters a horror beyond his imagination. He falls backward with a scream, recognizing the severed head of a black death demon hanging from a tree limb. Gasping for breath, he can't believe a high-ranking monster like that could be found dead in a simple mountain village. The realization hits him that this monstrous entity wasn't just killed, it was utterly exorcised by an overwhelming force. But the traveler's terror only deepens as he looks further into the moonlit valley. It wasn't just one demon. A pile of high-ranking monstrous corpses lies scattered across the landscape like trash. The Ghost Spirit King and the Hellfire Fiend, legendary bringers of ruin, have all been slaughtered by a single man, Namhi Chachong. The traveler can only stare in mute shock at the aftermath of a power that turned the hunters into the hunted. A guy in white robes and a paper mask stares out at a literal mountain of corpses. He can't believe all these top-tier monsters were wiped out in one place. He turns around to find a kid with long blue hair and a sword slung over his shoulder. "What the hell are you?" he asks. The boy is just chilling on top of the pile of dead beasts. He invites the masked man to come a little closer. This is Namhi Chachong, and he's only 12. He's already making threats, saying he'll spare humans, but any ghost is getting cut down. The masked man is stunned. A kid who hasn't even hit puberty yet did all this carnage. Namhi isn't here for the small talk and starts a countdown. If he hits 3 and there's no answer, he's swinging. Instead of being offended, the masked man starts laughing. To him, this kid is absolutely magnificent. He tells Namhi that in just a year, the boy will probably surpass him. Namhi isn't waiting a year. He lunges, but the man just laughs it off, saying he only came because he heard there was a strong exorcist around. Their blades clash with a loud bang. The kid is talented, but he's hitting a literal wall. Namhi stares him down, but the man tells him to just give it up. A regular sword isn't going to leave a scratch. The figure starts to dissolve into black smoke. He calls himself the Uncuttable, the Undying. He grows into a massive, shadowy demon known as Bulgazel, the Iron Monster. With a creepy grin, the giant demon offers the kid a little wager. Namhi doesn't back down an inch. He's ready to skip the games and just keep fighting. He locks eyes with the demon, analyzing his opponent. He takes a breath and closes his eyes for a second. Instead of charging back in, he sits right down and asks what kind of wager the monster has in mind. The demon is impressed. Most kids would have charged in like an idiot, but this one actually has self-control. He keeps the rules pretty simple. If Namhi can land just one single hit, he wins. They stand under the moonlight, the terms of the deal set. If the monster wins, he gets to become the boy's master. Namhi looks like he's already regretting sitting down. The demon starts talking about how they're basically the same because of their eyes. He claims he sees a lonely predator in the kid's gaze, someone who understands the emptiness of being at the top. He promises to mold Namhi into the greatest warrior under heaven. But then he adds a catch: if the kid fails and disappoints him. Whack, Namhi doesn't even let him finish the sentence. A solid punch lands right in the demon's face. Namhi stands over him while the demon is sprawled out on the ground. "So, am I your disciple now, master?" He follows up with a brutal stomp. He asks if hitting him again counts as getting expelled. The demon is desperately trying to block, begging the kid to wait a second. Namhi is genuinely insulted. He doesn't see any resemblance and tells the monster to keep his eyes of emptiness, talk to himself. Forget being a disciple. Namhi decides he's making the monster his slave instead. He can't even be bothered to remember the guy's name, guessing random stuff like Bulgari or Bulgahang. He settles on a new name, Sunbak. That was the start of a very tragic tale for the ancient demon. Fast forward a bit, and Namhi is putting him through some weird training. He demands Sunbak shout out technique names while he attacks. Sunbok refuses, so Namhee tests out a brand new talisman on him. It's pretty much just literal torture. Fast forward 3 years. Sunbok is now a shell of his former self, hiding in corners and shivering whenever he hears his name called. Namhee pops his head in, asking why he didn't answer. The demon just stammers that he was taking a nap. Namhee shows him a new tool he made to help him get some deep sleep. It's a 1,000-year sealing jar. Namhee tells him he's getting locked in right now and to try and escape on his own. Back in the spectral world, the Ancestor, now in Ti-Woong's body, tries to stall for time. He asks if the jar the demon is talking about is the one he broke at his house. Sunbok isn't in a talking mood. He's been stewing in a grudge for thousands of years and vows to wipe out the Ancestor's entire bloodline right here. The Ancestor keeps it casual, giving a little wave and saying it's nice to meet him. Sunbok just screams at him to shut his mouth. Ti-Woong's body is doing its best to look non-threatening. The Ancestor claims he didn't say anything earlier because he was shy. He even has the audacity to say that locking the demon in a jar for 2 millennia was actually for his own good. Sunbok has heard enough. He slams a massive purple limb down, nearly crushing the kid as he hops away with an oops. The demon tells him to pipe down, refusing to listen to any more excuses. The attacks are fast and heavy, barely giving the Ancestor room to breathe. Sunbok is having a blast, laughing at how pathetic the legendary Shaman King looks in such a weak human form. The demon's face is a mask of pure malice. He's not the same pushover he was back in the Scylla era. He gloats about how much stronger he's gotten over the ages, while the Ancestor was busy being dead. To him, the great Chachung is now nothing more than a frail microbe stuck in a teen's body. Sunbok lets loose an overwhelming barrage of strikes, determined to finish this quickly. But as he's swinging, he starts to realize something is definitely wrong. The Ancestor is still trying to play the diplomat, telling the monster they should really try using their words instead. Sunbok pauses, confused. Despite all his power, none of his fierce attacks are actually landing. The Ancestor's tone shifts. He's tired of playing around and warns the demon that he brought this beatdown on himself. The demon can only stare as the tide starts to turn. The Ancestor charges in, lamenting that he clearly didn't train his servant enough back in the day. Sunbok barely has time to react before the kid is right in his face. Since words aren't working, the Ancestor decides a physical lesson is the only way to get through to him. He delivers a massive, beat-down punch that echoes through the spectral space. The demon is sent reeling, forced back into his humanoid spirit form. He's absolutely livid, screaming the Ancestor's name in pure frustration. Suddenly, the scene cuts to a mundane kimbap heaven. The Ancestor admits his current state is pretty unstable. He's casually slurping down a bowl of gukbap, complaining that Ti-Woong and Sunbok completely ruined his reincarnation plans. He tells the reluctant trio that since they messed things up, they have to help him accumulate enough karma to fix it. When asked how they're going to do that, the Ancestor just says he'll stick to what he does best. He points out that the modern world is a total mess, full of people cheating, killing, and deceiving each other. It's the perfect environment for evil spirits to thrive, and the Ancestor is ready to go to work. He takes another bite of his food, his plan already set in stone. The goal is simple: find every evil spirit out there and eradicate them. With a messy, rice-covered grin, he officially announces the start of their mission: evil spirit eradication. Sunbok thinks the whole thing is total nonsense and isn't buying it for a second. He's still salty about being a servant for 3 years and then getting locked in a jar for 2,000 more. Ti-Woong's ghost is more curious about the logistics, wondering why that unbreakable jar suddenly shattered. Sunbok is practically vibrating with rage, ready to snap at any moment. The Ancestor explains that it wasn't an accident. The jar's sentence was simply fully served. He adds that once a 1,000-year jar finishes its time, it leaves behind a special blessing. That blessing is the ability to restore the sealed spirit's original living body. Sunbok freezes, his eyes wide. The Ancestor pulls out a yellow talisman, dangling the chance for Sunbok to become human again right in front of his face. The Ancestor sits in Ti-Woong's body, lecturing the kid about having some tact for someone at his level. Ti-Woong's spirit watches as the old man slams a talisman on the table, declaring Sunbok officially under contract. He offers a trade. He'll handle the bullies if Ti-Woong manages the channeling. Ti-Woong asks if it's true that the Ancestor's help kept him from turning into an evil spirit. The old man just takes the credit. It hits the kid pretty hard, realizing he would have been wiped out if they weren't related. He remembers the soul-crushing emptiness of being a vengeful spirit, even if it was just for a moment. He starts to feel for the other spirits, thinking they're just lost souls who don't know what's happening to them. To him, they don't need to be destroyed, they need salvation. The Ancestor can't believe what he's hearing from a complete rookie who hasn't even performed an exorcism. But then Ti-Woong starts entering immersion, a state usually reserved for masters. The old man is stunned because this hyper-awakened state takes decades of training to reach. And yet this kid pulled it off through sheer conviction. He lets out a laugh, calling the kid reckless, but he can't deny that the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Ti-Woong's spirit is back to being his awkward self, a bit stunned by the compliment. The Ancestor tells him to keep the salvation talk for when he's actually strong enough to back it up. The kid isn't backing down. He demands a proper contract with the 4 major insurances included. The ancient king has no idea what he's talking about. Ti-Woong isn't budging. Since his body is being used, he wants everything in writing. Ancestor wonders if it's some kind of heavenly king thing, but Ti-Woong explains it's about health insurance and pensions. The demon just walked away without saying a word. The demon just walked away without a word, leaving the two of them wondering if it had actually left ages ago. Ti-Woong thought the demon had bolted for good, especially since he got his body back. A heavy hand thuds against the wall outside. The Ancestor just shrugs it off, saying the guy is probably just shy about being in a human body again. A tall guy with silver hair walks in, and Ti-Woong gives him a friendly welcome back. But he's moving way faster than a normal person should. Full view of the man, and even Ti-Woong has to admit the guy was pretty handsome. He tries to rush him over to sign the contract, but something feels off. The man just stands there, staring them down with a cold look. He starts cracking his knuckles, and those prayer beads in his hand look dangerous. Shinal stares right through them, totally focused. He whispers 2 words, "Found you." Ti-Woong's spirit is still trying to process the shift in the room. Ancestor realizes the danger and yells at him to get up as the guy starts his technique. Fire starts pouring out of the prayer beads. A massive wave of flames erupts, aimed straight at the table. Everything looks normal outside the Kimbap heaven for about half a second. Then the whole place just explodes with fire. Inside the wreckage, a barrier holds the worst of the blast back. The Ancestor is livid, while Ti-Woong's spirit is just trying to figure out what happened. Shinal walks through the smoke, sounding almost impressed that they blocked his opening move. The Ancestor just scoffs, mocking the idea that a 1,000-year demon would be that easy to take down. Ancestor looks like he's seen better days, and Shinal isn't making it easier, mocking him for getting his ass handed to him. The old man realizes he really pushed this untrained body too far when he was subduing Sunbok earlier. Ti-Woong's spirit thinks there's just a big misunderstanding and tries to play peacemaker. But then he switches gears, getting aggressive and asking the silver-haired guy if he has any idea who he's talking to. The newcomer introduces himself as Shinal. He's here for the 1,000-year demon that messed up his master. Ancestor tries to tell him the demon's long gone, but he's more curious about who this master is. Shinal isn't listening to excuses. He's 100% sure the trail ends here, and he's ready to avenge Master Bayamchial. He tells the human to step aside so he can take out the demon's spirit, while Ti-Woong protests that he isn't a demon at all. Ancestor just sighs, already annoyed that he has to deal with the mess these other shamans left behind. He senses the shift in energy. Shinal is done talking and he's moving in for the kill. He yells at Ti-Woong to get down as a blur of motion heads straight for them. Ancestor is still cocky, thinking he can handle a kid like this even in his weakened state, but Shinal starts his chant. He calls out his technique, Hellfire, A massive blast of flames erupts, turning the restaurant into an oven. Shinal stands in the center of the inferno, looking totally unbothered while the fire consumes everything. Ancestor admits the kid's got talent, but realizes he's too drained to block an attack this powerful. He complains about the cheap bastards, not even giving him a second to catch his breath. Shinal is cold as ice, telling them that the talking is officially over. He tells them both to rest in peace as he prepares to finish it. But then a voice cuts through the roar, and a sword suddenly blocks the fire right in Shinal's face. It's Sunbok, but she's back in her human form and looking completely casual about the whole thing. She mocks him, saying that was a little too close for comfort. Shinal is stunned, demanding to know who she is. She just smiles, finding it hilarious that he's asking after spending so much time hunting her down. She starts her formal introduction, calling herself the Undying and Uncuttable One, the legendary Iron Monster, Bulgarsel. And she's not done yet. She introduces herself as the first apostle of the 4 major insurances. She's officially Sunbok now, and she looks ready to earn that paycheck. She even throws in a mention of her national pension as the flames flare up. Meanwhile, over at Bayamho Temple, things are going from bad to worse. The place is under siege, with shamans screaming for more sealing talismans to hold something back. The red-haired rookie is shouting for anyone who still has an ounce of energy left to get over and help. It's a total war zone. They're trying to chain down a massive, possessed man, but their backup is non-existent. Every available person is already on the front lines, trying to stop the bleeding. The rookie is shaking, her hands gripped tight around her prayer beads as she hits her absolute breaking point. Someone tells her to pull it together because they can't afford to waver now. A massive hand looms over her. They're dealing with the absolute strongest fighter in the entire company. Kim Seho, the branch director, shows up and starts barking orders to protect the company's reputation. He's trying to keep everyone focused, but even he has to admit they're about to snap. He looks at the monster they're fighting. The guy has lost his mind and is just using pure, raw physical strength. It's Bayamchial, the head of the Tiger Gate, and he's so powerful he's pushing back an entire army of shamans single-handedly. Bayamchial is a complete beast, his eyes glowing like embers as he bellows in a state of pure, raw possession. Kim Seho screams for reinforcements, knowing their regular staff can't hold a monster like this, but most of the other captains are out of reach. He wonders aloud if a Dakibai has truly taken over Bayamchial's body, as a dark, slithering shadow begins to wrap around the area. Kim Seho is suddenly paralyzed with fear as the presence of someone far more dangerous than a simple ghost makes itself known. A mocking voice laughs at the absurdity of the situation, a high-ranking captain thrashed by a demon and now a hijacked puppet. Kim Seho looks on in dread, realizing that of all the people who could have shown up to help, it had to be this man. The newcomer mocks how this mess is dragging down the reputation of the 12 branches. Meet Sahian, an arrogant, silver-haired shaman with snake motifs and a sadistic aura. He is the head of the Snake Gate, and he's already asking if it's okay to just kill his colleague. Sahian smiles broadly, looking like a man who has already decided the outcome of this fight. He casually orders everyone to get out, waving his hand as if dismissing children from a playground. Kim Seho tries to protest, reminding him that as members of the gate, it is their absolute duty to protect their captain. But internally, Seho is shaking. He knows Sahian is a predator and leaving Bayamchial alone with him is a death sentence. Sahian stares down Kim Seho, addressing him as the ritual host with a terrifyingly calm expression. With a flick of his energy, he sends Seho flying, mocking the director for talking back with such unearned confidence. Seho hits the ground hard, gasping for air as Sahian looms over him, laughing about how he only answers to one boss. He checks one last time if any other superiors are present who might try to stop him from doing what he wants. Behind him, the possessed Bayamchial growls, his sanity completely gone as he prepares to strike. Bayamchial lets out a primal roar, his body radiating a dangerous, overheating energy. The ground shatters as the captain lunges, but Sahian is already moving, far faster than the lumbering beast. Sahian dodges effortlessly, mocking Baemchiol for the pathetic state he's in. He scoffs at the unbending justice Baemchiol used to preach, viewing this transformation as the ultimate failure of those ideals. With a sadistic grin, Sahian decides it's time for a lesson, his hand glowing with a dark, cursed power. He unleashes his signature technique, Serpent's Fang. Black, needle-like energy erupts from his fingertips. The strike is surgical and brutal, puncturing Baemchiol's chest and sending a spray of blood into the air. Baemchiol chokes on his own blood, his beastly momentum finally brought to a screeching, painful halt. Sahian stands over the fallen man, declaring his intent to wrap this up once and for all. He officially classifies Baemchiol as an evil spirit due to the possession, using his authority to strip the captain of his title. He licks the blood from his fingers, savoring the moment of betrayal and triumph. With a cold finality, Sahian sentences Baemchiol to exorcism, a fancy word for a public execution. Kim Seho can only watch in horror, screaming Baemchiol's name as Sahian prepares the final blow. Suddenly, a voice like a calm ocean cuts through the chaos, calling Sahian a little snake. Sahian freezes mid-strike, his eyes widening as he realizes someone has just overridden his power. A small figure stands before him, stopping Sahian's lethal strike with nothing more than a gentle touch. Kim Seho and the rookie are stunned to see a child standing in the middle of a battlefield, yet the air around him is thick with ancient power. Seho whispers in awe, "This is the king, the supreme commander who reigns at the very pinnacle of the 12 branches. He is the one said to be closest to a god, a figure of legend within the world of exorcism." A vision of the 12 branches symbols appears, with the dragon standing above all others. Meet Chinryong, Supreme Commander, a powerful ancient spirit user inhabiting the body of a young boy with long black hair and glowing cyan-slit eyes. He asks Sahian why he seeks to harm the tiger. Sahian forces a smile, acting as if the old man appearing was exactly what he expected. But his words are poison. He claims he was just curious to see the look on Chinryong's face when Baemchiol died. Chinryong's cyan eyes glow with an intense, divine light as he repeats the name Little Snake with heavy authority. The commander warns Sahian that he has called him twice already, and the pressure in the air suggests there won't be a third. Sahian narrows his eyes, his smirk never wavering even as he admits he's already been pushed to the brink of death twice by the commander's intervention. He raises his hands in a mock surrender, taunting Chinryong by calling him an old man despite the commander's youthful appearance. Getting right in the king's face, Sahian accuses him of playing dirty by catching him off guard earlier. He dares the commander to try calling his name again, radiating a newfound, aggressive confidence. The pressure between the two captains is suffocating. Kim Seho and the rookie clutch their throats, unable to breathe under the weight of such intense bloodlust. Kim Seho gasps for air, his vision swimming as the spiritual energy in the room threatens to crush his very soul. Chinryong finally snaps, his voice cold and commanding as he tells Sahian he's had enough of the nonsense. The atmospheric pressure reaches a breaking point, a crackling tension filling the dark void between them. Calling him Little Snake once more, Chinryong stands unmoved, his presence far outweighing Sahian's desperate posturing. The Supreme Commander sees right through the act, stating plainly that he knows Sahian never truly intended to kill Baemchiol. He tells him to stop playing and start helping. Sahian's expression shifts instantly into a playful, toothy grin, laughing off the previous tension as if it were all a big joke. He mockingly praises the old man for being a regular psychic, easily reading his true intentions. As the pressure lifts, Seho and the rookie collapse, panting and wheezing as they finally draw breath again. Sahian casually brushes off the fact that he pierced Baemchiol's throat, promising to stitch the man back together now that the fun is over. He boasts about his research division's skills, claiming they've handled similar spiritual injuries tens of thousands of times. Citing the commander's orders, Sahian tells everyone else to get lost, but Seho's face is a mask of pure terror at the thought. Kim Seho throws himself to the ground, begging the king to hear his plea and let him stay by his captain's side. He argues that his own life is worthless compared to the risk of leaving the two rival captains alone together. Sahian watches with a snake-like amusement as Seho desperately tries to protect his fallen leader. Chinryong reaches out, his small hand touching Seho's bloodied face. He remarks that the tiger is truly blessed with such loyal companions. With a gentle touch and a swirl of water-like energy, the commander instantly heals Seho's injured eye, telling him there is no need to worry. The Supreme Commander stands firm, his word given, as the survivors of the Beamho Temple struggle to process the overwhelming events of the night. Sahian prepares to depart, leaving one final parting shot. He's dying to see the commander's serene face finally crumple in defeat one day. The chapter closes on Chinryong's eye, glowing with a brilliant cyan intensity that hints at the true depths of his power and ancient wisdom. Night fell on the temple, marking the quiet end of a long incident. Inside, Baeumcheol was bound by massive chains, struggling helplessly against his restraints. Sahian stood over him, asking if he was satisfied with how things turned out. Baeumcheol didn't answer, his eyes fixed on the man who had supposedly come to help. Sahian just stared back, unfazed by the silence. He assured his captive that he wouldn't lay another finger on him, claiming he'd given his word to the higher-ups. Baeumcheol could only grit his teeth in response. He promised to return the man to normal eventually, telling him to just hold on a bit longer. Crouching down, Sahian dropped the act and admitted he actually found pure bliss in the suffering of those he loved. He leaned back, practically savoring the moment. To someone as twisted as him, this was the definition of love. He then mentioned a little prank he'd played earlier, anticipating that things would go south. He admitted to sending Baeumcheol's own student, Shinal, straight into the thousand-year demon's path. A massive, disturbing grin split his face as he explained that he even lied to the kid, telling him he was strong enough to handle it. Just then, Shinal burst into the room, desperately calling out for his master. Sahian's creepy smile didn't fade for a second. He watched the boy arrive, already imagining the look on Baeumcheol's face when he found his student dead. Shinal stood there, breathing hard, while Sunbok watched from right behind him. He immediately greeted Captain Sahian, trying to keep his composure despite the obvious chaos. Sahian asked if he'd successfully avenged his master, feigning interest in the mission he'd set up to fail. Shinal hesitated, admitting things had gotten a lot more complicated than he expected. He apologized for the delay, stating the situation was extremely urgent, and he'd report in full once they were finished. Sahian's expression darkened. He didn't like variables, especially ones that messed with a promise he'd made. As the group walked away, Sahian's shadow twisted into the shape of a massive cobra. He wondered if it would just be easier to kill every single person standing in his way. Back at the entrance, the Ancestor yelled for them to wait up. Occupying Tiwoong's body was a struggle, and he cursed the boy for having such a weak, garbage physique. Tiwoong's spirit watched with a mix of annoyance and worry as his own body dragged behind. The Ancestor suddenly stopped, sensing something suspicious up ahead. He looked up at the temple, his eyes narrowing as he spotted Sahian. Sahian looked back with a smug smirk, asking if he was ever going to lower his eyes. The story jumps back 2 hours before this meeting, back to the snack bar. Meet Park Sunmi, the 87-year-old owner who had seen far too much in her long life. Suddenly, a massive explosion of fire ripped through her shop, sending debris everywhere. Sunmi just stood there, barely reacting to the destruction of her life's work. Shinal was in the middle of it, unleashing waves of flames while marveling at his opponent's speed. Sunbok moved like a ghost, effortlessly dodging his hell prison magic with a mocking smile. Watching from the sidelines, Tiwoong's spirit was stunned by the display of power. The Ancestor noted that even though her human body was weaker than her days as a spirit, her synchronization was perfect. Sunbok stepped through the smoke, huge demonic arms manifesting behind her as she taunted the boy. Shinal growled, calling her a rat and demanding to know how long she planned on running away. He lunged forward, but Sunbok caught his arm before he could even blink. She leaned in close, mockingly asking if he truly wanted to save his master or just die trying. She'd even kept the man's body preserved for her own use. Shinal's expression twisted in rage at her words. Sunbok looked down in surprise, as flames started to flicker around her own body. Shinal didn't care about her games, unleashing a point-blank fire blast that engulfed them both. He glared through the heat, promising to rip out her tongue first for talking so much trash. Sunbok smirked, wondering if his tiny, fragile beads could actually do anything. Shinal told her she was dead wrong, as a massive fire blast erupted from his hands. This was his hell prison, and it wasn't just for show. Sunbok just looked at him, completely unimpressed. Shinal was left completely petrified the moment Sunbok landed her champion's groin kick. The fireball in his hand just fizzled out instantly. She taunted him, reminding him that since she was the one who cast the curse, she was the only one who could break it. She told the kid he should be begging on his hands and knees. She asked if he wanted his arm or his mouth ripped off next. Her casual threat left him speechless. Sunbok mentioned that his master was currently a crippled mess, making him an easy target for any passing ghost to possess. Tiwoong and the Ancestor watched the scene unfold from a distance. The idea of a petty ghost entering his master's body was a terrifying thought. Realizing he had no other choice, Shinal begged her to help. Sunbok just laughed, telling him he should start by calling her big sister. He swallowed his pride and called her big sister, but warned her that there was someone at his master's residence just as dangerous as her. Sunbok leaned in, curious about who could possibly compare to her. Shinal didn't flinch, even as her shadow loomed over him. He explained that his master had been in the middle of sealing a duoxini. The news clearly caught Tiwoong and the Ancestor off guard. He added that this entity was one of the 5 element specters, and in terms of raw power, it was way above him. Even Tiwoong's spirit looked concerned. The 5 elements were known as the worst and most powerful specters recorded during the Silla period. Everyone knew their reputation. They were so strong that, back in the day, the nation had to mobilize entire armies just to hold them back. Their shadows still loomed large over history. If they were dealing with something that dangerous, then Bayamchial was in serious trouble. Tiwoong's face was a mask of worry. The Ancestor just smiled, revealing he was the one who actually formed the 5 elements after beating up the toughest guys he could find. Tiwoong couldn't believe what he was hearing. He realized that Bayamchial was weak because he'd exhausted himself fighting Duok. Tiwoong asked if they were actually going to try and save him. The Ancestor said they had to, since the man had ended up like that helping his descendant. Plus, he figured he could catch up with Duoxini while they were at it. Sunbok and Shinal just watched them talk. Tiwoong wondered what would happen if so much time had passed that Duok didn't even recognize the Ancestor. The old king just brushed it off. He figured enough time had passed for that to be a possibility, but they still had Sunbok in case things got ugly. Tiwoong didn't look convinced. The Ancestor pointed out that even if the mind forgot, the body would definitely remember. He was ready to go, no matter what. Sunbok laughed, promising to hit him a couple extra times just for good measure. Tiwoong's spirit was suddenly yanked away, begging them to wait. He worried about what would happen to the snack bar and the old lady they'd left behind. The Ancestor told him it would be fine. He explained that once he was done, the memories and traces left behind would be completely restored. Shinal looked on, doubting that such a thing was even possible. The Ancestor just stared ahead, knowing that's just the nature of how spirits work. They were ready for whatever was coming next. 2 hours later at Bayamho Temple, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the night. Something was going horribly wrong. Bayamchial was in pure agony, his body convulsing as the curse took hold. The sight was enough to make anyone's blood run cold. Shinal burst into the room, screaming for his master. He was desperate to reach him before it was too late. Sunbok followed close behind. He yelled at Sunbok to hurry up and lift the curse. She just told him to hold on, complaining that his rushing was making her lose all motivation. Tiwoong's spirit watched as Sunbok turned her attention to someone else in the room. There was another presence here that felt different from the rest. The Ancestor looked over at a man with snake-like eyes, asking why he was telling her not to lift the curse. Sahian just stood there with a smug look on his face. Tiwoong wondered if this guy was an executive of the Ryong company. He looked like he carried a lot of weight in this organization. He could sense that Sahian was incredibly dangerous. There was a coldness in the man's eyes that made his skin crawl. Sahian explained that the curse was a high-ranking one that would take even him time to undo. He questioned how a schoolgirl like Sunbok could possibly handle it. Sunbok looked at him with narrow eyes, wondering where an expert of his caliber had been hiding before suddenly appearing here. Sahian internally mocked her, knowing it was a curse he'd cast himself. He told them he had one more thing to say before they proceeded. The air in the room felt heavy with tension. He explained that the company known as Spirit was an organization meant to safeguard the balance between worlds. His voice was calm, almost too calm. They protected the mediation between humans and bizarre entities like ghosts and specters. He'd been doing this for a long time, and he knew how things were supposed to go. From the company's perspective, the sudden appearance of people like them was a serious problem. He wasn't about to let them disrupt his plans. The existence of entirely foreign anomalies was something they couldn't ignore. Ti-Wung and the others could only listen as he explained how the company would judge them. Shinil warns the others to keep their mouths shut and stay away from the company until everything returns to normal. The girl quickly makes up a story about a cheating boyfriend to explain why she was spying in the first place. Shinil isn't buying her act for a second, but she just shrugs and admits she made it all up on the spot. Cha-Chung, still possessing Ti-Wung's body, tells them to stop the lovers' quarrel and focus on breaking the seal. He warns them that once the seal is undone, the creature is going to lunge at them immediately. The monster inside, Jiokbai, snarls behind his chains as his red eyes flare with rage. The girl claims she understands perfectly, looking way too calm for the situation. Cha-Chung tells her she'll need to lift the curse the exact moment he breaks the seal, assuming her skills are actually real. She's confident she can do it, so Cha-Chung offers her a spot in his division if she's really that talented. He stands before the chained beast, telling everyone to prepare to be amazed. He continues his recruitment pitch, but she tells him she needs her parents' permission first. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts as the final release begins. A massive impact shatters the courtyard. A blinding pillar of light erupts as the ancient seal is finally torn apart. The energy surge is massive, tearing through the air and lighting up the night sky. It slams into the ground with enough force to obliterate everything in the center of the courtyard. Sunbok, the spirit, starts panicking and screaming that he failed. But Cha-Chung realizes the monster didn't just break out, he's looking for blood. Out of the smoke, Jiokbai emerges and starts counting his potential victims. He snaps his shackles like they're made of paper, showing off his terrifying strength. The monster takes a heavy step forward, crushing the stone floor under his bare foot. He roars that he won't forgive them for the deception they used to lure him out. He stands tall, flexing his massive muscles and claiming he's in a surprisingly merciful mood. The Goblin King demands to know which one of them was the one to actually break his curse. The girl steps up immediately, taking all the credit for shattering the seal. Jiokbai's blue eye glows as he stares down the tiny human who's acting so bold. He offers her a deal, become his bride and he'll spare her, but everyone else dies. She just gives him a blank stare, wondering if he really doesn't recognize her because she got prettier. Cha-Chung and Sunbok watch the interaction with a mix of confusion and dread. Cha-Chung remembers that his spiritual power is completely drained after his earlier fight with Shinil. The girl starts doing some mental math, trying to figure out her next move. She suddenly points right at Cha-Chung and declares that he's her husband, shocking the entire group. Cha-Chung sarcastically congratulates the spirit Sunbok on the marriage to play along with the nonsense. He warns her that lying like this is a serious violation of his personal criminal code. Jiokbai laughs, thinking the guy is just some weakling the girl has chosen to protect. The goblin senses a bit of energy from him, but dismisses it as a flickering candle about to go out. Cha-Chung isn't backing down at all, maintaining his arrogant attitude even in a weak body. He mocks the goblin for being too stupid to recognize who he's really talking to. He suddenly stops himself, realizing he might have just overplayed his hand. His hands are shaking, and he knows his spiritual power is at rock bottom right now. Despite the danger, a smirk forms on his face as he finds the whole situation amusing. He starts walking toward the monster, deciding it's time to fix the mistake the girl just made. Chachong tells Jiokbai that in the goblin world, loyalty is far more important than life itself. The unknown girl looks on in shock as Chachong decides he'll just have to remind the monster who he really is. Jiokbai is confused by the boy's nonsense, but Chachong continues, asking if he remembers a certain name. He brings up the time they exchanged blows under a ginkgo tree on a long-ago autumn night. Jiokbai is stunned as Chachong smugly declares that his big brother has finally returned. He identifies himself as the master of the 5 elements, the man who handed the monster his very first defeat. He keeps pushing the big brother angle, acting like their old hierarchy is still in full effect. Jiokbai repeats the name, Chachong, in disbelief, while the girl just watches the bizarre scene unfold. She's still focused on the odd situation, trying to figure out what Chachong's plan is. The girl starts tearing up, overwhelmed by the intensity of the confrontation. Jiokbai's eyes narrow as he demands to know how this weak human boy could possibly be his legendary big brother. He lifts Chachong off the ground by his shirt, tired of listening to what he thinks is pure nonsense. Chachong tries to guess the monster's identity, asking if he's the goblin king known as Chengbai. The monster bursts into laughter, mocking him for thinking he's that first-generation weakling. Jiokbai declares that the entertainment is over, and he's going to slaughter every single person there. The girl can't help but smile, seemingly finding some humor in the impending disaster. She lets out a sigh of relief, as if she's found a way out of this mess. Dakibai are far superior to humans in every physical category, from muscle mass to bone density. With all those hormones, Dakibai naturally became creatures obsessed with entertainment and dopamine. Their greatest thrill wasn't alcohol or lust, it was something far more violent. They call it bloody combat, a noble ritual where they test each other's strength to the limit. Once a hierarchy is established through these fights, they remain as older and younger brothers for life. The first Dakibai king hosted a bloody tournament every 100 years to keep their order. This festival, the Dakibai War, was used to select the strongest among them to serve as the new king. A young Jiokbai demands to know who the current king is, even as the final battle for the 3rd title is about to end. He disrespectfully grabs the old goblin's beard, asking who the strongest guy around here is. The old man notes that Jiokbai is practically a minor at only 92 years old. He explains that the current strongest is the one who has held the 2nd position for 1,000 years. Jiokbai is stunned to hear someone has exceeded the average lifespan by that much. A massive goblin finally yields, exhausted from the brutal combat. Nakwangbai acknowledges the fight, standing over his defeated opponent. Nakwangbai, the 2nd Duoxini, places a hand on the defeated goblin's head and praises his effort. The defeated fighter laughs, accepting his place in the hierarchy. Jiokbai suddenly approaches Nakwangbai, asking if he's the king now. The young punk introduces himself and says he's heard that beating Nakwangbai will make him the strongest. Nakwangbai is amused by the kid's sheer audacity. He reminds Jiokbai that color names are only reserved for the truly powerful. Nakwangbai shouts at him for arrogantly ignoring the tournament order, but Jiokbai just shrugs it off. The crowd warns the kid that Nakwangbai is already exhausted from the tournament, but Jiokbai doesn't care. Nakwangbai smirks, nodding that he's actually just getting warmed up and is ready to fight. He tells the young Dakibai that he intends to teach him a harsh lesson for breaking the rules. The older warrior flashes a wicked grin, ready to put the upstart in his place. Jiokbai charges in, his foot smashing into the ground with explosive force. He leaps through the air, closing the distance to Nakwangbai in an instant. Nakwangbai isn't even looking, confident that the kid is no match for him. The veteran warrior's face is stern as he prepares to handle the upstart. Jiokbai's fist flies forward, his speed catching even the experienced Nakwangbai off guard. The spectating Dakibai laugh, reminiscing about how everyone got scolded by brother Nakwangbai when they were young. They think it'll be a good education for the kid to hit a wall this early. But the old Dakibai watching from the side starts to look flustered, as the match isn't going as planned. One clash, two clashes, The two warriors are locked in a high-speed exchange. 3 clashes. They continue to trade heavy blows, neither giving an inch. Jiokbai lets out a manic laugh, reveling in the intensity of the neck-on-neck battle. The audience is stunned into silence, unable to believe a young punk is fighting on equal footing with the second in command. The old Dakibai observes that while the match looks even, Nakwongbai's 1,000 years of experience should be the deciding factor. Nakwongbai finally lands a crushing blow, pinning Jiokbai to the ground. He thinks Jiokbai is a diamond in the rough, who will surely be the next Duoxini one day. However, he misses one crucial thing about the monster he's fighting. The battle he thought would end in minutes drags on for hundreds of exchanges, then a full day. The sun sets and rises again, as the two monsters continue their grueling duel into the second day. 3 days pass, and the earth around them is shattered from their endless conflict. By the 4th day, the intensity hasn't wavered, though both are clearly reaching their limits. Finally, after 4 days, 4 hours, and 32 minutes, the long battle reaches its conclusion. Jiokbai is left kneeling on the ground, blood dripping from his mouth as he gasps for air. The old Dakibai is horrified to see that his prediction was completely wrong. Jiokbai tells the fallen Nakwongbai that he learned a lot, standing over the veteran's lifeless body. He sighs, acknowledging that he took the throne by force and ignored the proper tournament order. He looks back, wondering if any of the other Dakibai have complaints about a young upstart taking over. To his surprise, the entire crowd kneels before him, acknowledging their new, terrifyingly strong leader. Jiokbai smiles a wicked, toothy grin as he prepares to inherit Nakwongbai's legacy. He declares he will be their Duoxini for 10,000 years, but a voice from behind tells him his term ends today. Jiokbai's eyes widen in shock as he realizes someone managed to sneak up on him without him sensing a thing. Sahian casually stands behind the monster, mocking the Dakibai for holding their sacred tournament so secretly. The old Dakibai is outraged that an arrogant human would dare to interrupt their ritual. Sahian just waves him off with a smirk, telling his old friend to stay still so things don't get messy. Suddenly, dozens of black-suited Ryong agents emerge from the shadows, surrounding the area. He warns the monsters that it would be tragic if they got hurt, acting as if he's doing them a favor. Jiokbai grits his teeth in fury, realizing these humans intentionally waited for him to be exhausted before striking. Roaring with rage, the monster charges at the human intruder despite his injuries. Sahian is genuinely surprised that the beast still has this much strength left after a 4-day battle. He narrowly avoids a devastating punch, his eyes cold as he analyzes the monster's movements. Seeing an opening, Sahian notes that it looked like Jiokbai's injury from earlier was a weak point. He delivers a brutal kick that sends the monster flying back, mocking the pain it must cause. Jiokbai glares at him with pure hatred, cursing the humans as nothing more than cowardly bastards. Sahian gives a mocking grin, pointing out that a king who ignored the tournament order shouldn't be talking about fairness. He leans in, his eyes full of malice as he tells the monster that they aren't fair and honorable Dakibai like him. Back in the present, Jiokbai reflects on how many months have passed since that day, his massive hand gripping Tiwung. He looks over at the young woman beside him, nodding that since he gained such a cute wife, his old anger has subsided quite a bit. Releasing a terrifying red pressure, the monster remarks that his resonance with his current body is quite excellent. He turns his gaze to the fallen shaman, impressed that a mere human like Bayamchial managed to hone his body to the level of a Dakibai. Jiokbai reaches into his robes, his expression calm as he decides he's done with this pointless conflict for now. He effortlessly lifts the young girl onto his shoulder, telling the humans they're lucky he doesn't want to waste energy sparing their lives. Shinil grits his teeth, sweating as he realizes how truly powerless they are against such a legendary beast. He wonders if their combined strength would even be enough to seal the creature again, as they did in the past. Suddenly, the Ancestor, speaking through Tiwung's body, interrupts, asking if Jiokbai really fought without following the rules back then. With a cocky smirk that looks out of place on the boy's face, he proposes a duel of their own, a Dakibai war. The monster is momentarily taken aback, his massive hand hovering near the silent young girl as he considers the boy's brazen offer. Jiakbai leans down, his glowing blue eye level with Ti-Woong's, warning him that he will make him regret such a foolish challenge. He explains that a true Dakibai never refuses a fight that comes their way, even from a small fry. Ti-Woong, controlled by the Ancestor, holds up a finger to set one condition, knowing he's at a total disadvantage in a normal fight. He suggests they keep it simple and fair by exchanging blows one by one, testing who can withstand the most. Jiakbai's eyes narrow as he wonders if the human is only suggesting this because he's afraid of a real battle. The monster laughs, flexing his massive muscles as he accepts the terms, amused by the boy's straightforwardness. "I go first," Jiakbai declares, his fist moving like a blur as he delivers a devastating punch to the boy's chest. The impact is so great that blood splatters across the ground, though Jiakbai claims he actually held back out of pity. Ti-Woong is sent flying backward, coughing up blood as his body crashes into the mountain wall from the single strike. Jiakbai stands tall, declaring that he is the strongest Duoxini in history, and that some mountains are simply too high to cross. Shinil and the Chachong spirit rush to the boy's side in a panic, while the monster hopes this served as a lesson for his arrogance. Jiakbai freezes as the kid stands back up like nothing happened. Chachong ignores the blood dripping down his face and keeps walking toward the monster. Shinil can only watch in disbelief. Inside the shared mind, Chachong scolds Ti-Woong's spirit for being in such terrible shape. Ti-Woong apologizes, but the Ancestor realizes this body's resilience is actually insane. The spirit is just as shocked as Chachong is by how much damage this shell can take. Chachong recalls the kid jumping off a building and walking away without a scratch. He looks at his hand, realizing this is no ordinary human body. It's the body of a successor. Chachong realizes this changes everything. Jiakbai gets fed up and decides to stop holding back for the host's sake. The monster wants to establish dominance right now, but Chachong just asks if he's lost his mind. The Ancestor steps forward, taunting the giant for even trying to mess with him. He tells the Dakibai that it's time he learned the difference between gold and garbage. He spits out some blood and tells the monster it doesn't matter how high a mountain is. Chachong winds up a punch, promising to show him what the sky actually looks like. He puts everything into a single strike, aimed right at the monster's gut. Jiakbai is sent reeling, his eyes nearly popping out from the impact. Somewhere else, a glowing eye snaps open in the dark. Madian stands in the pouring rain, looking down at something. She's genuinely impressed by the sight before her. She finds Sahian's body pinned to a tree with his head completely gone. She stares at the silver-haired corpse for just a second. Then she starts doing a happy dance like she just hit the jackpot. She mocks him for dying in the field, but Sahian suddenly appears right behind her. The silver-haired man smiles, nodding that the cleanup crew is taking their sweet time. He explains that he had to use his shedding technique to survive the encounter. Madian tells him to shut up, complaining about having to run all the way from Italy. Sahian rubs his head, admitting he got sent flying just as hard as the others. He looks up, sensing a massive surge of energy in the distance. A giant pillar of golden light erupts into the night sky. The explosion tears through the building nearby. A cleanup crew in suits moves in immediately to restore the damage. The agent shouts for the walls to be finished before more witnesses show up. He notes that the old lady is the last one left to deal with. Park Soon-mi begs them to let her keep her memories, saying they're precious at her age. The agent smokes in silence as she talks about seeing her dead husband in a dream. He tells her there are no exceptions as he prepares to wipe her mind. He explains that erasing memories involves shifting things at a cellular level. He tells her not to be sad about what she's about to lose. A dark spirit clings to him, whispering that consuming memories is an eternal hell. Shinil watches the whole process with a cold, yellow-eyed stare. The unknown girl and Ti-Woong's spirit watch the scene in total shock. Jiakbai is left stunned, unable to figure out how he was just humbled by a human. Jiakbai is baffled, wondering why the kid intentionally missed that strike. Cha-Chung tells him that landing a hit like that would have ended up hurting his little brother. He smirks, asking the monster if he even thinks he could have survived a direct blow. Jiokbai stays silent, realizing he might have underestimated the person standing in front of him. Convinced of the legend, the monster bows his head in deep respect to his elder brother. Cha-Chung is satisfied, saying he has just two favors to ask of him now. The first is to stop possessing that body and give it back to its rightful owner. For the second, he points and tells him to catch the traitor who picked the wrong side. Suddenly, the spirit leaves and Taewon regains consciousness, looking completely lost. He blinks in shock, trying to process where he is and what just happened. Taewon is relieved to be back in control, as the unknown girl explains that Cha-Chung just passed out from using too much power. Without warning, the girl lunges forward with a punch of her own. She lands a solid kick on the giant, sending a clear message. She draws a weapon, her eyes narrowing as she takes a stance. She yells at Jiokbai for showing such poor manners to a senior disciple like her. The giant Dakibai can only stare in confusion at the sudden change in atmosphere. He raises a fist, preparing to handle the annoying girl. He tells her he spent years assisting her elder brother and knows exactly how to deal with someone like her. The girl keeps arguing, claiming he's interpreting the elder brother's orders however he wants. Jiokbai pauses, actually considering if her logic makes any sense. She orders him to get down on his knees as Shinil checks on the boy. Taewon wonders if some ancestral power saved him, but Shinil tells him it was all his own strength. The silver-haired man admits he'd been watching closely, and his hunch was spot on. He drops the bombshell, telling Taewon that he's actually a successor. Shinil starts explaining the concept of an originator to the confused teenager. He defines them as ancient deities like Cha-Chung, who are the source of all this power. He mentions that the heroes from famous myths were basically all in this category. These figures passed down their powerful DNA through their direct bloodline over centuries. After several generations, that power finally concentrates into a single person. He looks Taewon in the eye and confirms that for this generation, it's him. Taewon asks if his shaman father had the same power, but Shinil thinks he was probably just a normal guy. He explains that these gifts usually skip a few generations before appearing again. Taewon is devastated, realizing his father went missing despite being an ordinary man. He grabs Shinil, begging to know if there's any way to find a missing shaman. Shinil tells him that joining the Ryong organization is his best bet for protection and answers. The boy is absolutely horrified by the idea, shouting his refusal. He points out that the company's reputation for dealing with people like them is anything but stable. Shinil insists that as a successor, Taewon is way too valuable for them to ignore. Jiokbai grumbles about dirty humans, while the girl tells him to just drop the attitude. Suddenly, Ma-Yin jumps in with a grin, hugging the girl and promising they aren't that bad. The unknown girl is startled by the sudden contact, as Ma-Yin explains she got held up by Sahian. Ma-Yin turns toward the giant and the boy, saying it's time to finally get this situation sorted out. Jiokbai is stunned, admitting he didn't even see the girl move. Shinil and Taewon can only watch in silence as the tension suddenly shifts. The newcomer waves cheerfully, introducing herself as Captain Ma-Yin from the Ryong Exorcism Company. She smirks at Shinil, complimenting his handsome face and saying it's good to see him working so hard. Her expression turns dark as she asks if she should just finish off the monster right then and there. Jiokbai stands his ground, telling the woman that there's no need for any more violence. He explains that his elder brother has already ordered him to return the boy's body to its rightful owner. The unknown girl watches closely, as the giant Dakibai confirms he intends to keep his promise. Shinil relaxes slightly, nodding that the word of a Dakibai is usually something one can trust. Ma-Yin looks around, checking if Taewon and the mysterious girl are the only civilians left in the area. Taewon is completely lost, while Ma-Yin suggests they clear up any lingering misunderstandings before they part ways. She gives him a friendly smile, recommending that he join their company but promising not to force him. The boy is taken aback by the offer, wondering if joining such a group is even allowed for someone like him. Madian laughs it off, saying that forcing people is what cults do, and they aren't the bad guys here. She tells him that since he's already entangled with them, karma will eventually lead him back to their door. With a playful wink, she asks if everyone is ready to head out and leave the mess behind. The world begins to blur as the supernatural presence starts to fade from the scene. Under a bright golden sky, the Ryong agents prepare to make their exit. Madian leaps into the air with incredible grace, shouting that she envies the adventures they're about to have. Tiwoong is left reeling from the massive stories and revelations he's just been handed. The unknown girl follows after them, adding that she'll be waiting to see what kind of stories he brings back. Madian waves one last time as she disappears into the distance, leaving the boy behind. Suddenly, everything snaps back to reality with a thunderous silence as Tiwoong finds himself on the ground. He looks around in shock, realizing that the snack shop and the street have completely returned to normal. The unknown girl stands nearby, her hand on her sword as she notes that even the old woman inside seems perfectly fine. She tells Tiwoong that if he has nowhere else to go, he might as well join Ryong, much to his confusion given her earlier warnings. Tiwoong thinks back to Madian, realizing just how much of a force the Ryong captains really are. The unknown girl reflects on how serious things would have been if she had actually tried to fight them. Tiwoong remembers how Sahian was able to talk normally even after taking a direct punch from the monster. He recalls Shinil calling them all captain, including the muscular man named Bayamchial. The mysterious girl realizes there are at least 3 individuals of that incredible rank within the organization. She envisions the powerful Supreme Commander Chinryong standing behind them all, commanding such legendary figures. Tiwoong decides that if Ryong has that kind of military power, it would be smart to have them as allies. The girl starts to walk away, claiming she's strong enough on her own and wants to enjoy having her body back. Tiwoong calls out to her, but she just tells him to head back to school where people are waiting for him. The sun shines brightly over the local high school building. Inside, the red-haired unknown bully is packing around, furious that Park Tiwoong hasn't shown up for 2 days. He grinds his teeth in anger, convinced that the boy intentionally sold him a fake talisman. Tiwoong scratches the back of his head with a worried look, realizing the people waiting for him are just looking for a chance to kill him.